Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome into Pack-A-Day Live. Thank you for bearing with me with the different time changes and everything like that. Kids got done with school early, and there's no basketball practice tomorrow now because of all the snow. So we're going to have a nice little family night, maybe make a fire in the fireplace, have some dinner, everything like that. So decided to be a great night for that, and went with a little bit of an earlier Pack-A-Day Live. So appreciate your flexibility on that per usual. We'll get to as many questions as possible over the course of the next probably about 40 to 45 minutes. Going to try to keep it a little bit shorter. And then, we'll be back for Pack-A-Day Happy Hour tomorrow, of course, at 3 p.m. as well. So again, thanks so much for being here. We'll get to your questions right away. What's up, Andy? Great win in Seattle. Let's dominate the Saints on Monday. Do you think there's a chance we could see a 360-degree view of your office? I've always wanted to see the Andy cave. Try to do my best here. You're not going to get to see, I got, because I got the lights going and everything. All right, so behind me, obviously, we got the painting. Over here, we've got the bookshelf with cards. There's all the hats. There's all the hats up there. Bookshelf, different cards. We've got the Bart Starr, the Charles Woodson, the Giannis books, just random stuff like that. You've got the Pack-A-Day 1000 jersey that the team got me when we hit 1,000 episodes, which is one of my favorite things. And then we've got the TV up there, just something nice and small for in here that fits perfectly. And that's about it. And then we got, like I said, the lights going. There's nothing else. It's pretty simple. Bookshelf, picture, Bart Starr behind me, and TV. And that's it. And then, of course, we've got all of this stuff, monitor, and then all the radio and audio equipment and things like that. That's the humble abode of the office. Now I got to try to get this thing back on. I'm sure this will be super easy and won't take me forever. Make it so that it's not super crooked. Maybe eventually that way, down more. Look what you did. This is all your faults, Matt A. Okay, that's not working. Okay, what did I do? Sorry, this is beautiful, wonderful. If anyone's just like joining, somebody wanted a view of the office. So I gave him a view of the office. There we go. I think that's mostly okay. We'll mess with it later. All right. Enough of that. See if I can fix that a little bit. And boom. And we're back. All right. So that's the office. What's your favorite year watching the Packers as a fan? This is a pretty easy answer, even if it didn't end obviously the way that I wanted it to. The Brett Favre season, which was 2007, when they lost to Corey Webster in the interception in the NFC Championship game. That was my favorite. I think anytime you have sort of lack of expectations, and that team that year was maybe supposed to go around 500, and anytime you have sort of a lack of expectations, and then you make an unbelievable run, 13-3 during the season, and then have that epic game against Seattle, and then just one game away from the Super Bowl. Obviously a disappointing ending, no two ways around it. But that season on the whole was probably my favorite season, the one I just enjoyed the most. Just pure, wholehearted, enjoyed every second of that season. Not much negative. I mean, even one of the games that they lost was that Bears game on the road where it was like 1,000-mile-an-hour winds, and it really wasn't even a game, and just came down to running the football, and Chicago just ran the ball better, whatever. Like didn't even like barely counted. So yeah, that was the game I probably enjoyed, or the season I probably enjoyed the most. Just a brutal, very bitter ending, which of course we're all very used to in Green Bay for the most part anyway. But certainly 2010, very up there as well with winning the Super Bowl 96. Obviously, anytime you get that ending, tough to beat that as well. But the season, probably 2007. Dutch Mafia, thank you so much for becoming a new member. Appreciate that a ton. Hope you're enjoying all the bonus content. The Almighty Supreme One, has it felt like Evan Williams has dropped off a bit since the hamstring injury? I would say from like a grading standpoint, there's definitely been a little bit of a downtick. I don't think it's actually him playing worse or anything like that. To me, this is more about just sort of your rookie ups and downs. I think he probably got the benefit of certain situations going his way. Maybe at the beginning of the season, maybe not as much right now. I think he's a really good player. I love the way that he plays. There was a couple plays on film this past week where it's just like, this dude just gets it. He plays downhill there. He rallies to every ball. Like he takes good angles. Like he's just a really heady, smart, talented player. I have no concern with Evan Williams whatsoever. He's going to be a really, really good player. He's going to play 10 years in this league. He's phenomenal. So I love watching him play. I have no concern. I would say more circumstantial than anything, but the way that he plays the game has not changed. It's unwavering. So I guess I don't have any concern about Evan Williams. Really like how he plays, and I think it's only going to continue to get better as time goes on. What do you think will make the difference on defense come playoff time, McKinney or Cooper? Who do you think will make more of a difference, McKinney or Cooper? I just think McKinney has such a huge impact on everything that Jeff Hafley does. So it's not just the ability to get turnovers, but how he can cover, how he can open things up, how he can make things easier for Evan Williams and Javon Bullard, the rest of the secondary, all of that stuff. So I think even when you're not seeing Xavier McKinney make an impact, he's making such an impact. So I'll go McKinney, but man, what Cooper did this last game and just showing you how he can impact a game every single week, that's really special too. But I'll still go the veteran. I'll still go the playmaker and the guy that is sort of the linchpin of your defense in Xavier McKinney. But man, Evan Williams is definitely, Edgerrin Cooper is definitely getting there from a big play standpoint. Andy, it's going to be interesting to see if the Packers use this game as a little bit of a scouting report for Alontae Taylor. He's so far this year, maybe the Packers go after him if they see that they like him. I know what you mean here. Chicken is basically you're looking for Alontae Taylor as basically somebody that they could be scouting to see if they'd be interested in him. I don't think so. I think that spot is still going to go to Keyshawn Nixon next year. They're kind of similar players in the way that they play. Alontae Taylor playing a lot in the slot. At least he did. I haven't looked at it so far this year to see how much he's playing at what position. But I don't think that they're going to have a huge. Yeah, they play him. Well, they've played him left, right. They've played him in the slot too. So he's played a little bit of everything. I don't think Alontae Taylor is going to be somebody that they go after, though. I definitely see the thought process there, but I think I don't see them going aggressively after him in any way. Pick one, resign Slayton for sure. I think it's probably best that they move on from Myers. And listen, you can never have enough depth along the offensive line. So if they bring him back, I'm not going to be like massively frustrated. But I think you're talking about a $10 million a year deal somewhere around there for Josh Myers, which is less than ideal. And to me, I think you're probably better off starting to get somebody else who can maybe play those snaps. And I think you'd be better off for it in the long run. Slayton, you can live without. I don't think that's going to be like a massive issue if all of a sudden you lose him. He's only playing about 13 to 15 snaps per game. He was really good this past week, though. But like, he's a solid rotational player. Like, there will always be room for a TJ Slayton on every single roster. You've got a 330-pound dude who can be a good run defender and get a little bit of penetration up the field. Like, that's going to be a guy that plays in the league for a while. Like I said, always has a role. So I'll take Slayton. He's probably cheaper. I think he adds a little bit more, and I'm just probably a little bit more ready to go in a different direction at center at this point. So definitely going with Slayton on that one. Weed says the same thing. Would I rather trade a player like Jair or just keep them until they are clearly done? I mean, that all comes down to, like, there's so many variables that go into that, right? So if I'm trading Jair, what's the reasoning behind it, right? Is it just he hasn't played enough? Is it that I'm getting a huge return? Is it that, you drafted a couple of corners and you're ready to move on? You think you can get equal or better value in free agency or in the draft, and that you're, willing to take on whatever you can get for him? Are you going to release him anyway due to reasons and therefore take what you can get? I think there's a lot that goes into that decision. And then, of course, what you get in return for the trade. I think one of two things usually happens. Either A, you decide, hey, we're ready to move on. Let's see what we can get for him. And then you basically offer him up to the highest bidder, right? Or somebody comes to you and says, we're going to give you X, Y, and Z for Jair, and it's too good of a deal to pass up. So there's one of only two things that takes place. I don't think it's going to be part B. So I think it would be they decide, hey, we're going to go in a different direction here. If we don't, trade him, we're going to cut him. Let's see what we can get in return. We'll offer him up to the highest bidder and see what we can get. But it just depends on the player, depends on the situation, how old they are, what you can get in return. There's never a one-for-one perfect example there, but I just think it always comes down to the situation. As far as Jair, same thing, right? I think you would go and you would see what you could potentially get in return. And if that makes sense for you as a team, obviously you need to be careful with that too, because usually that stuff leaks. And now all of a sudden, if Jair gets wind that he was on the trade block, that becomes a whole issue. So you have to be careful with it. And that's why I say it's usually some team came to you and knocked your socks off and you're like, all right, I have to do it. Or you've already decided you're going to move on in some capacity and let's see what we can get. But I think it would probably be the form, again, what you could get from and that you've decided to move on. Okay, good. You scared me for a second, Almighty One. Glad that the audio is fine for Fred. All right, I don't see any other issues. So it looks like we're good on this end. But if there is audio issues, guys, definitely let me know. Should be good. I'm seeing testing over there look good. Seeing testing on here look good. So I think we're okay. Start Lad McConkey or Devontae Smith in fantasy. Nemo Hose always do the opposite of what I say when it comes to fantasy stuff. I would say I'm liking, well, Broncos tonight and Washington. I'll go Devontae Smith, but my gut originally did say Lad McConkey, so I'll say Devontae Smith. But then, like I say, do the opposite. So I guess go Lad McConkey in that situation. 2014 season was good as well. Still can't believe we did not win the Super Bowl that year. That one is almost just like too much for me to handle. And there was just like you had the Rodgers injury, and it was just a weird year. I never quite felt quite as attached to that team either. I don't exactly know why, but I never quite felt as attached to that one. 2007, I was very attached to. So, but yeah, good season and very, very bitter ending for sure. Seems like you can tell if it's a run or pass from the way the offensive linemen are setting up. Is it obvious to the defense, and does it matter? There's usually tells that teams can pick up on if it's going to be a pass or a run. You also have to be careful because they can use that against you too. A lot of like play action stuff, they'll do a similar set and then they'll go play action off of it. There's a lot of times where you're not trying to disguise it, right? It's 3rd and 8. Everyone knows you're going to pass. You're not disguising what your set is. You're just making sure that you're in the best set possible to pass protect. Everyone knows a pass is coming. And in certain situations too, right? Like 3rd and inches, like teams know you're probably going to run and you're probably going run set. And again, that they may use against you to go play action or something like that. But teams are pretty smart. They self-scout really well. They know where their tells are. They know where they need to clean it up. They know where it ultimately doesn't matter. I think for the most part, that stuff is usually much ado about nothing, unless you get like a tell on something of like where they're actually trying to disguise it from a run pass standpoint. And you get like, oh, every time they go play action, they do this. Then it's a little bit more of a helpful scenario. But for the most part, that stuff usually doesn't matter all that much. The way that Edge Cooper returned the interception reminded me of another 56 from the Giants back in the 80s. Let's not get too carried away, Siggy. Like I've been on the Edge Cooper train here, and I am trying to temper expectations as much as possible, but Lawrence Taylor might be a bit of a bridge too far even for me to get to. But I know what you're saying from an athleticism standpoint. No question about it. I do not track the ratio of play action passes. It's not something that I tally in any way, shape, or form. No. You can find that stuff on like PFF though, and like I think it's probably a couple other statistical sites if it was something that was needed, right? Seems like teams are not throwing deep against the Packers D and McKinney much. Is that true? Yeah. I mean, when is the last like big play that Green Bay gave up, especially down the field? Just doesn't happen. It's been, you know, kind of really fun and interesting to see how this team goes about stopping those big plays. And a large part of it is Xavier McKinney. Kudos, though, as well to Evan Williams. When they drop Xavier McKinney into the box, Evan Williams is doing a good job too, and the corners aren't really letting anything behind him. So this is definitely something where you have a team that's not giving up explosive plays. They're really doing a lot better against the run. They're not allowing a ton on the outsides, which is funneling everything to the middle of the field, which has been an issue against Miami and certainly to a greater extent Detroit. But with Edgerrin Cooper back there last week against a team that wasn't quite as good as at exploiting the middle of the field, like all of a sudden you get to offense and there's just not a lot of weaknesses for Green Bay's defense, especially if they're getting after the quarterback. Carmen Vitale dropped a stat for tomorrow's show today. Since the bye week, Green Bay is number 1 in sacks, tied for first in sacks, and is 10th in pass rush win rate. So it's not just 1 week this past week against the Seahawks. Since the bye, tied for first in sacks, 10th in pass rush win rate. So awesome stat from her on pulling that out. And you start getting pressure, not allowing big plays, not allowing stuff on the outsides, stopping the run. Yes, middle of the field, bit of an issue, but it's getting better as the weeks go on. And certainly this past week was one of their better weeks in the middle of the field. B. Brown, good to see you. Imagine if we had Cooper and Romeo against the Lions last meeting. I feel like we would have won by 7 with the team that we had Sunday night. A couple things. I opened my grades episode with kind of talking about this because my highest graded players this past week on offense were Romeo Doubs and on defense were Edgerrin Cooper. So yeah, it would have been nice to have those two players in particular against the Lions the week before. That being said, if you would like to talk about who was more banged up in that game, who had bigger injuries, and who had more injury issues, nobody's competing with Detroit at this point. That was even before they had some of the issues that they had this past week. I'm just not, Detroit won that game fair and square. They had more injuries than Green Bay had. And yes, you would have loved to have had Cooper and Dobbs out there. They would have loved to have had Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader and Aiden Hutchinson and Alex Anzalone. And we can go on and on. Like, we can spend the next 20 minutes talking about their injury report, right? That's, I'm sure, what Detroit would have loved. I would have loved to have seen Detroit be healthy, Green Bay be healthy with Jair too, and let those two teams just go at it. We didn't get that. And what we did have left over was still a really great game. And Detroit came out on top fair and square. So kudos to them for that. But yeah, no question about it. Would have been nice to have Romeo, Cooper, and Jair Alexander as well. Not trying to put too much pressure on Cooper, but I think in a couple of years, he can become a top 5 linebacker in the league. I think he become a top 3, a top 1. I think he can be that good. Now, same with you, Ben. I'm not trying to raise expectations too high. Like, let's let the guy start some games and play a full game and some of that sort of stuff before we start crowning him the greatest of all time. But he all the potential is there. There's nothing that he cannot do in this league if he continues to grow and get better as time goes on. He is an absolute stud. He is a playmaker. He is a heat-seeking missile. And I am extremely bullish on what he can become in this league and cannot wait to see how he continues to get better as a member of the Packers. Andy, I am a young Packer fan. I turned 23 in February. Am I right to compare Josh Jacobs to Amon Green? Watching both of their tape brings out so many similarities. I think there's definitely similarities there when it comes to how often you can utilize them, their power ability inside, a little bit of wiggle. I think Amon had much better breakaway speed than what Josh Jacobs has. I think the offensive line for Amon during that time was better from a run blocking standpoint than what Josh Jacobs gets now. I think Jacobs is a little bit better, probably even a little bit more than that, but a better receiver out of the backfield than what Amon was. But there are definitely similarities there. And I think what Jacobs can do from just a bell cow standpoint, very similar to what Amon Green did. In that aspect, I think there's some definite similarities there. And your post-draft take that Imagine Cooper was first and Morgan was second has turned out to be pretty accurate. 56 had a pretty high draft grade, and man, does he look like it. Yeah, I talked about this a little bit yesterday too. I mean, you can reorder it any way you want, right? If right now you said that Edgerrin Cooper was their first-round pick, and then Evan Williams and Javon Bullard were their second-round picks, which of course Bullard was, and then, Jordan Morgan and, I still think Marshawn Lloyd as your thirds, and then go from there, right? However you want to organize them, you would feel really good about that draft. At the end of the day, where people are selected doesn't matter. It's pretty rare that the guy that they take first actually ends up being the best guy from their draft class. And that's for most teams too. Like, you've got, is it usually the first guy or any of the other 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that you draft? It's usually going to be one of the other ones, right? So it's not super important as to when you get those guys. It's just important that you find good players somehow, some way. I always talk about one stud, 2 really good starters, and at least a rotational, depth piece, special teams player, whatever. Green Bay's well on their way to having a stud in Edge Cooper, 2 big time starters at minimum, and Javon Bullard and Evan Williams. And then you still have Jordan Morgan, Marshawn Lloyd. We'll see what Tyron Hopper becomes. Like, it's a really good situation to be in from this draft for Green Bay. Imagine if the refs weren't paid off for that last Lions game. Don't believe in that, but yes, some calls definitely did go against Green Bay. That's definitely fair to say. There's so much Fred Warner pedigree and Edge Cooper. I would temper that a little bit. I think Fred, great athlete, but unbelievable linebacker instincts. And I mean, unbelievable linebacker instincts. Now, I think Edge Cooper has good linebacker instincts. I would temper Fred Warner just a little bit. I think that's a very special player. I'm trying to think of who I would say. I don't know that I have a perfect 1A example of an Edge Cooper. They're different. I don't know. I'll have to think of that a little bit to see who I would ultimately compare him to perfectly. Just trying to think really quick here. It's not quite Derek Brooks. It's not Levante David came to mind a little bit. That was again, not exactly apples to apples, but that was one that came to mind a little bit. Demario Davis, I think high-end Demario Davis, who I don't think gets the credit that he deserves. came to mind a little bit. But I have to do some thinking on that. But I don't really care who he compares to. He's a freak. He's a stud. And I'm very happy that Green Bay has him. I hope I can catch you at the Admirals game on Saturday. Yep. I'm looking forward to that. I'll definitely be there, obviously. And going to do I think it starts at like 6:00, the Q&A ahead of time. So make sure to get there for that. Obviously meet the former Packers. Ed West is going to be there. George Kuntz is going to be there. Robert Brooks is going to be there. I'm going to be doing the Q&A before. I'm going to be doing the first intermission, answering some questions along the sidelines, and then also going to be doing the human hockey puck as well. So if you're in Milwaukee this weekend on Saturday, make sure to get out to the Admirals game. Would love to see you there. And B. Brown, I'm sure we'll connect at some point, hopefully. What's going on with Jaden Reed the last few weeks? He's been non-existent. Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into it. They definitely utilized him more this past week and tried to get him a little bit more involved. I mean, he would have had that big third down conversion had it not been that was it third or fourth that he slipped on the play. That would have been a big play to him. The week before, there's a big pass interference call that would have been a huge completion to him had there not been the pass interference on the play that goes not on the box score. He had the drop. There's a play that they were trying to get into in the red zone that just didn't work. That was the play that you had the illegal screen by Christian Watson. Like, they're trying to get him involved a little bit more. As Matt LaFleur said, I don't really see teams like specifically trying to take him away. You also have to remember, like, this past week, it was Josh Jacobs fest. I think the week before that, was it Detroit that Jordan had like 12 completions? Or there was one of those games recently where Jordan had like 12 completions in the game. There just haven't been a ton of completions and a ton of opportunities. A large part of that is due to Josh Jacobs, right? And him being a major focal point in this offense. And it just lessens the opportunities. Add in the fact that you've got Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and like all of those players. Like, there's just a lot of Tucker Kraft, a lot of mouths to feed in the offense. So I wouldn't read too much into it. But I will say you want to continue to get him a little bit more involved. He's too talented of a player, right? So they'll figure it out. They'll get the right calculus down, the right chemistry down of how to get each player as many snaps as they can. But I think part of it's just circumstantial. He's still really, really good, super talented. And I'm fine if they don't need him a ton and then come playoff time, he breaks out again in a major way. Totally cool with that. He's a huge part of this offense. And yeah, everything that he was asked to do, he did well, other than falling down on that key play. But other than that, and that was just a slip on the field, which the field was slipperier than I think people talked about. A lot of slips in that game. Matt, good to see you. Have you watched the Aaron Rodgers Enigma Netflix docuseries? No, I don't get much time for TV. A lot of times I'll have stuff on in the background. Usually it's sports, soccer game, football game, basketball game, whatever. But not a ton of time for documentaries and things like that. Maybe at some point I'll check it out. Heard there was a lot of controversy, the Ted Thompson thing today, though. Glad they got that sorted out. When Lloyd comes back, where is he in the rankings in the running back room? Does he get real touches going into the playoffs? I don't think you're going to see Marshawn Lloyd this year. And even if he comes back, my guess is at some point they like open the window for him and let him practice. I don't think he's going to have any impact on the remainder of the season. I think you're going to be looking at him in 2025. And if you do, like, if you put the over under on 10 carries for Marshawn Lloyd, even including playoffs the rest of the year, or even 10 touches, I'm going well under. And today, Matt LaFleur kind of tempered expectations, said he didn't want to slam the door shut, but I don't think it's looking super promising for Marshawn Lloyd at the moment. So I wouldn't get your hopes up. I think this is going to be something we have to discuss more in 2025. And then he'll go into camp and compete with the rest of the backs to see where he can get on the pecking order. But my guess is they're still going to want to get him involved and be a piece of this offense. But he's going to have to compete with Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks for playing time, and pass pro is going to be a big piece of that. But he'll clearly be on the 53, and he'll be a more impactful player, no question about it, next year. And it's a great situation to have where they're going to have a lot of good running backs going into the 2025 season. Seeing some people's reaction to Morgan being out for the year is upsetting. It's almost like half the fan base is rooting for him to fail. And I don't understand. Like, the weird thing for me, right? For those of you who remember, I was not a Morgan guy going into that draft. All right. Second round pick, totally fine. Would have been totally cool with it. And kind of like we talked about just a little bit earlier, had they taken Cooper at what, 26 did they have? I think it was around there. And had they taken Morgan with the Cooper pick, I'd have been like, awesome. That's a really good, like, I would have understood both of those picks completely, but I wasn't a Morgan first round guy. Who the hell cares? Like, I think that's what gets lost. Like, I've never been somebody who is like, well, I didn't like that guy in the draft, so now I'm just going to hold a grudge against them forever. Like, who cares if you don't? You know what? I didn't like Rashawn Gary at first either. He turned out to be a pretty damn good player for Green Bay. Would have Brian Burns worked out better? Probably. Montez Sweat. There's other guys out there we could have had. You know who I wanted in that draft? You know how much of an idiot I am? I wanted Andre Dillard in that draft. That's who I wanted with that opening pick. I loved Andre Dillard coming out of that draft. You know, it's a complete freaking bust in that draft. Andre Dillard. You know, it's pretty darn good. Rashawn Gary. Like, as soon as, like, yes, a huge part of the fun of the draft for, I think, me and a lot of other people is figuring out the guys that you like, who you want them to draft, who you would like to be a member of the Green Bay Packers. You know who everyone wanted to be a member of the Green Bay Packers? You know who everyone thought was going to be like the steal of the draft? Josh Jackson. That was like the most celebrated Packers pick by everybody. And I mean everybody. There wasn't like everyone was thinking like maybe even Josh Jackson in the first round, right? And then when they get him in the second, every analyst, every draft dude, every draft gal, everyone loved that pick. He sucked. Like you never put it together, right? And how many draft picks have gone in the like how much Jordan Love stuff did we have to sit through? Oh, they should have taken Michael Pittman. All right. Jordan Love's worked out pretty well. As soon as they become members of the team, who the hell cares who we liked or didn't like going into the draft? And I'm still going to give my honest reaction and say, yeah, it wasn't a guy that I loved during the draft. But here's what you always want to do, right? With Jordan Morgan, for example, there are a laundry list of unbelievable things that he did in college, of high-end athletic traits, of really unbelievable stuff that you can point to and be like, they can make him a great offensive lineman. And there are a lot of things that you could point to and say, like, these are things I'm concerned about. And he's going to have to overcome these things in order to become a good NFL player. Do you know how many players that phrase applies to? All of them. Every single effing one of them that applies to. There are a reason that there is strengths and weaknesses for every prospect in every draft of all time. Because every single one of these players has things that they do incredibly well. And every single one has 2 or 3 things at minimum that if they don't clean up, if they don't mitigate, if they don't minimize, they could end up being not the player that you expect them to be. And for all of the RAS and non-RAS, we want players with instincts and yada yada. Edge Cooper, super freaky athletic dude. You know he's on this team because that's the type of player that they like. That's working out pretty well. And sometimes you take the guy that's supposed to be the most ready player in the draft to come in and impact right away, 24-year-old out of University of Georgia, defensive tackle, not a position that usually needs a ton of time. We're going to plug and play Devontae White. He's going to be great right away. Hasn't worked out as well. He's fine, right? He's a good player. I don't think there's anything about that, but like has not been this instant impact guy. There's no perfect solution. And for all of us, and this goes for teams too. I mean, teams get this stuff wrong all the freaking time. This is the most inexact science anything in sports, basically. You're doing your due diligence and the best you can to give yourself the best opportunity to draft good football players. And just because maybe like Jordan Morgan, not my guy at that point in the draft, who the hell cares? Like, I don't care. You shouldn't care. And as soon as he becomes a member of the Green Bay Packers, that dude, I want everything in my power to then cheering him on to become hopefully a Hall of Famer. And I'll gladly be wrong. And like, just like you and I, there'll be players that we like in the draft that Green Bay takes and they'll be good. There'll be players we like in the draft that Green Bay takes and they're bad. There'll be players that we like in the draft that Green Bay doesn't take and they're going to be good, and vice versa. There'll be some that we like and they're going to be bad. Same thing on the other side. There's going to be players like, I don't really like that guy all that much. And you go watch him play and he becomes an amazing NFL player. The trajectories for these players are all over the place. And anyone thinking that they have a perfect pulse on, yep, this guy for sure is going to be a no doubter, whatever, he might end up really good, but you're not going to have 100% hit rate or success rate. And yeah, I do get the feeling, Almighty Supreme One, of like sometimes when, people who wanted Cooper DeJean and instead you get Jordan Morgan, well, now it's like they'd rather have a I told you so complex than let's wait and see. Let's see what he becomes. And guess what? I wasn't an Eric Stokes. I talked about something that I didn't like before, like I wanted Andre Dillard over Rashawn Gary. I wasn't an Eric Stokes guy. I thought, again, mid-second round, late second round pick for him would have been fine with it. I thought first round was an extreme reach. Guess what it ended up being? An extreme reach. We're all going to get some stuff right. We're all going to get some stuff wrong. And like, you kind of constantly look to figure out what you got right, what you got wrong, and reevaluate it. And that's, again, part of the fun of the process. But man, that dude is working hard. He's an incredibly talented individual. And more often than not, offensive linemen are going to play or pay huge dividends for you down the road. You have one bad offensive lineman in there, and it is a nightmare. So if he can even be a good, solid, rotational, even number 6 offensive lineman, is that an ideal ROI for your first round pick? No. But do I think he can be a starting caliber, good offensive lineman? Yeah. Do I think he can live up to that first round expectation? Absolutely. But by all, can we give him a second? Can we give him a hot second to, like, let's see what he becomes? He's probably going to be day 1 starter next year. Like, probably from week 1 on, he's probably going to be in the starting lineup. Let's see what he can do. And he could easily be a player that, again, multiple position versatility, really talented athlete. I think he's going to be a really good player, but let's give him a second before we crap on him and say, should have been Cooper DeJean. All right. Let's wait it out a little bit. Can you share what grade you gave to Cooper on his interception play? Was he the only player who received points in that play, or did other players get some credit? Pull up my handy dandy notebook here. I have to find it. That was like second half, right? That's the wrong game. Give me 1 minute. All right, where's my big Cooper grade? Oh, there it is. Cooper got a plus 0.65 on that grade. Aaron Mosby had a slight negative on that play. Carl Brooks had a slight negative on that play. I did not have any other positives on that play. Most of it was pretty nondescript. Yeah. So Cooper plus 0.65, Mosby negative 0.5, Brooks negative 0.1 on that play. Those are my only graded players on that particular one. A little behind the scenes action there. I just want to say how I love the Green Bay Packers. Just wanted to say I love how the Packers have become a power offense this season. Go Pack, go! Easy for me to say, Richard. Yes, I do love how they are working the run game. I think there's a lot of stuff they can still clean up. To be honest, I do think that there is better run blocking available to them. I thought it was even better earlier this season, and I think they need to be a little bit more consistent, especially in second halves. I know that some of the times they're running against some heavier boxes, and they need to navigate that. But I think they can be a lot more consistent. I was talking to John Papadopoulos on the radio in ESPN Lacrosse today. I would like Josh Jacobs' superpowers not to have to be used to take a negative 3-yard gain and turn it into a 1-yard gain. I'd like to see what could be a 4 or 5-yard gain turned into a 20 to 30-yard gain by using those same superpowers. He shouldn't have to be dodging players behind the line of scrimmage is what I'm trying to say. So that I would love for Jacobs or for the line to block a little bit better, to give him a little bit more opportunity so we can see some more of those big runs. But yes, he is a power runner. I love what they've done with the run game. They're dedicated to it. And that's one of the biggest things you can say is, like, regardless, even if it's not working perfectly, they're going to stick to running the football. And that's definitely a turning of the page for Matt LaFleur, and definitely different with Josh Jacobs on this team. Ted did not draft Love. Don't exactly know. I know Matt came out and said it today of, like, he doesn't think he said it that way. He thinks there may have been a cut, whatever. It's much ado about nothing. Who cares? Like, it's like, now we understand it was either a bad slice by the producer or just a, weird slip by Matt, and it doesn't matter either way. But we know it was Goody's decision and the front office's decision, and it's nothing against Ted, right? But yeah, it's just a weird scenario, right? So LVN, I think he can still be a part of the defense, but he is being outplayed currently. What does the Pack do with him? I think, like, right now they have it right. He's a rotational defensive end playing 25 snaps per game. He's mostly fine at that. Over the, I think, last 4 or 5 games, I think I have a slight positive grade on him overall. Like, he's not hurting the team. This is not like a player that you're out there and just being like, oh my God, how is he out there or anything like that. Like, he's a fine rotational player. Is he living up to first round expectations or becoming a, Pro Bowl caliber player or even like a really good starter? No, he's not there yet, but he's a good, solid rotational player on that defensive front. And you can never have enough of those. And he's a good effort player. I think he's getting a lot better against the run this year. Instincts are getting better. You see little flashes here and there. I'm still I'm not out on LVN. I'm not necessarily buying stock on LVN, but I'm not out on LVN. I think he can still be a good football player in this league. Again, does that ever live up to expectations? We'll see. But he can play. And again, 25 snaps per game is right around where you would kind of want him. And I have no issue with that. Jerome Baker, I think Cooper's way better than that. I think Bobby Wagner is such a unbelievable instinctual player too, that I really didn't want to go in that direction either. So I don't know. I'll have to think a little bit more, but just a super freak athlete at the position. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's a perfect example, but I don't really care. Like I said, I don't really care. He's just a really good player. Packers fans took over Seattle Stadium. They really did. And it was really, really cool to watch. Awesome on them. Awesome on the Packers fans, I should say. Strongly agree that the refs had it out for Nixon on penalties. He has been called for are ridiculous. Yeah, I went back and watched. It's funny because in real time, when they showed some of the replays, I thought the first one was ridiculous. And the second one was more, or the first one was really nitpicky, ridiculous. And the second one was maybe more understandable. When I watched them on all 22, I thought the reverse of where like the first one, I could kind of see what they saw. And then the second one looked really ridiculous and nitpicky, but either way, hopefully they, aren't too harsh on him moving forward. And he's also a player that I think is having a bit of a better season than I think Packers fans are realizing. But yeah, some of those penalties have definitely been a bit nitpicky. Kind of over the Jaden Reed as a punt returner experiment. So here's the thing. I don't know that there's a great alternative. Like Keyshawn Nixon, I know is going to be the immediate answer. Dude is a wild card back there. And we saw him, muff one, or no, he didn't fair catch it. Was he the one? I can't remember. I think Reed maybe didn't fair catch it and it bounced and hit Ballantyne. And Nixon was the one who muffed one. But then we saw Jaden Reed muff one this year. Like Nixon can give you a boost, but like you'll see him catch it over his head. You see him just always not maybe make the best decision, maybe take a few more chances and gambles. So like Nixon's the one you put out there if you are in need of a big play. But like Jaden Reed hasn't exactly made big plays, and now he leads the league in drops. So is that the guy you want back there returning punts? I don't know that I trust a Bo Melton back there. I don't know that I trust I don't know. There's not like a player that immediately, like an Evan Williams maybe. Do you try Evan Williams? Like I would trust him to probably be somebody who could catch the ball. And like maybe we just go all out on the Micah Hyde comparison here. Like maybe you give him the opportunity. Like I would trust him to make a good decision, but I don't know how good his hands are from like a punt return standpoint. I think I'm still okay with Reed for now, but it's worth monitoring. And it would be something of like, hey, if you could find somebody to like add to the practice squad that's just a returner, like a really good punt returner, and maybe you could call him up on game days in the playoffs if really needed, or if you had the extra spot available, it wouldn't be maybe the worst idea in the world. But I'm okay with Reed. I hope maybe in the future they can find something maybe a little bit better. Reed, every time Jaden Reed goes to catch a punt, I'm very scared. I don't know that I'm quite there yet, but it's a little bit nerve-wracking. Joseph, I'm actually more scared of Minnesota than I am of Detroit. Is that a weird thing to say? I actually think Minnesota's a good team. I don't think they're fraudulent at all. I think they're actually a really good team. It pains me to say that, but I actually think they're a really good team. I think Detroit, the injuries are really going to catch up with them. I really do. I was talking to Carmen today, not to give out all of our conversation. The Lions allowed 79 points in the last 2 games to Buffalo and Green Bay. In their previous 6 games before that, before they started getting obliterated with injuries, they allowed 83 points in those 6 games combined. 83 points in 6 games, 79 in their last 2. So quite a bit of a different defense for Detroit. Not sure I trust it, and I think teams are going to exploit it. So I actually think Minnesota, good team. I don't think Detroit's a fraud. I just think they're massively beat up. Will Goot finally stop taking project players in the first after multiple failed picks? I don't care. Find good players. Sometimes you need to develop them. I actually don't really think that Jordan Morgan was this huge developmental player. He was ready to play and start along the offensive line. Like had he stayed healthy going into camp, he would have been the starter at right guard going into the season. He would have been a plug and play starting right guard. Like that's not exactly a huge project style player. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not concerned over that is the way I'll put it. He needs to do better with his first round picks. I don't care if it's a project. I don't care if it's a guy that's going to take time to develop. I don't care if it's somebody that can play right away. I don't care. Just you got to have a better hit rate than what he's had. So I'm less concerned about the project players. I'm more concerned of you just got to hit on them one way or the other. And it's the hit rate's been a bit too low really since the Jordan Love selection. Put Nixon back there to at least try and squeeze as much value out of him as we can. Again, a little bit more of a wild card when Nixon is back there. But to be fair, Jaden Reed's been a bit of a wild card too, and he doesn't have quite the upside as Nixon. So I get it. Imagine we picked Josh Jackson over Jair in the first round. That would not have been good. Andre Dillard has just been quietly collecting a check. He's been active, but I can't remember when he has seen the field on at least. No, he's got like 3 or 4 snaps in garbage time, maybe a little bit more than that. But no, he hasn't played any significant snaps for Green Bay. So many people said Josh Jackson should have been the first pick instead of Jair, and Jair will suck while Jackson will be a superstar. It's a weird league. Weird league. How the hell did we miss TJ Watt? He was right in our backyard. Yeah, here's the funny thing. Which way do you want it? You know what TJ Watt was coming out by everyone's expectation? Project player. Everyone expected it was going to take a bunch of time, that he was raw. He barely played much in college, and it was going to take time for him to put on functional strength and all of those things. Like, we don't want project players, but we should have taken TJ Watt. Got to weigh those out a little bit. Listen, I would have taken TJ Watt with that pick. That's one I've been on record with. I also like 2 other players at that point. Jabril Peppers was a player I really liked a ton at that point, and David Njoku was the other one. Now, Njoku's had a interesting career, but he would have been, I think, a really talented tight end for Green Bay. And obviously in the last 3-4 years, he's been much better. And can you imagine if he actually had good quarterback play in Cleveland? Would have been a good pick. Jabril Peppers, another bizarro career, Cleveland, New England. Don't think he would have really fit the culture all that well. But again, maybe he would have been a better fit within, or maybe it would have been different if he was drafted into Green Bay or whatever. But TJ Watt was the guy I wanted. Did not want a trade back, did not want Kevin King in that draft. Such is life. You win some, you lose some. But again, TJ Watt, project player. So what are you going to do? But for me, it was Watt, Njoku, or Jabril Peppers were the 3 guys I really wanted at that point in the draft. Jabril may have gone slightly before 2017 draft. Njoku was the player I think that was traded up for at that spot. I think where Green Bay traded down, if I remember correctly. And it was 27, I want to say 30. So he went 30th. Oh no, Green Bay. Yeah. Okay. So Green Bay traded down from 29 with Cleveland. Cleveland took Njoku. Jabril Peppers had gone at pick 25. So Peppers was not available. It was Peppers, Njoku, and Watt that I wanted as we were getting on the clock. Peppers went at 25. You get to 29, Njoku and Watt are on the clock. And then the Browns trade up with Green Bay. Green Bay goes back to 33. And then the Browns take Njoku at 29. Steelers take Watt, the pick later, at 30. Yeah, sucks. They, on the clock at that time at pick 29, Njoku at tight end, TJ Watt at edge rusher, Ryan Ramczyk, who before injury was one of the best offensive tackles in football, Budda Baker at safety, Dalvin Cook at running back, who there were the rumor on the draft day. And again, who knows how much of this is true or not, but it makes more sense when you consider a deal that the Packers made a year later. The rumor was that at the top of the draft, Green Bay liked 3 players that they were deciding between at pick 33, Kevin King, Dalvin Cook, and Deshaun Kaiser. Now, obviously, none of those have really, well, Dalvin Cook really turned out for Minnesota for a while, right? So like that would have been one that would have probably been pretty nice, but you would have had Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones, probably would have been a bit of overkill. Just certainly would have been nice if they would have stuck at 29. Hell, I would have even taken Njoku, right? But TJ Watt definitely would have been nice. But like I said, project player. So, be careful what you wish for, I guess. Morgan Hopper and Williams were the most unpopular picks, and really only Williams has satisfied the fans so far. Yeah. But Williams has been a stud too. So yeah, I don't know. It's a crapshoot, guys. The Malik Willis package gets 4 plays against the Saints. I think Matt LaFleur pulls it out in the fourth quarter. Side note, we get some Hopper and Oladapo film too. If we see Malik Willis, it'll be because the game's in hand, and then he's coming in at that point. I don't think we see a package. What are your thoughts on the idea of Dion as Raiders head coach with Shedeur as quarterback there? Go have fun, Raiders. Sure, go ahead, do it. I don't think it would be successful at all, but yeah, go for it. If you're Goody and the Jets cut Devontae and he calls you up and says he wants to come back, but the money has to be right, what's the max contract you give him? I don't know, but I would definitely entertain that discussion for sure. I would probably, if he gets cut and Devontae called and said, I want to be a Packer, I'm making him a Packer. Like, well, we're going to make it work. That's where I'm at with it. We're going to make him a Packer. I deleted my comment because you covered it earlier. How come you read it anyways? Do you not know when a deletion occurs? Oh, it's probably because I'm in StreamYard, Gary. So it's possible that it got deleted on YouTube, but not in StreamYard in there. So that's a possibility. Why'd I have to do Peter like that today on Twitter? First of all, Peter and I is always just in good fun. Second of all, there's 0% chance that I was going to think of the phrase, and I want to make sure I have the phrase correct here. Where did it go? Oh man, where did it go? How did I lose it? Did it delete somehow? What the heck? Oh, here we go. Here it is. So somebody on Twitter, Julia, on December 18th, said the sluttiest thing a man can do is be super knowledgeable about sports. And I get to quote tweet and say, someday you'll be a slut, Peter Bukowski. Once you write that, there's no way you can't hit send. So obviously the insinuation is that he doesn't know or isn't knowledgeable enough about sports to be a slut. So I said, Peter, someday maybe you'll be a slut. But once you write the tweet, quote, someday you'll be a slut, comma, quote, Peter or at Peter Bukowski, that just has to get sent. You don't have it. It's not even in your control anymore. You just have to hit send. It's just a rule. So all in good fun. Ryan Shazier is a great example, Matt. That's a pretty damn good example. I love that. I love that comp. That's probably the closest thing that I could think of for Edge Cooper. So yeah, that's a really, really good one. Like that a lot. All right, Brandon, thank you for the super chat. I wish I would have known you can use Madden ratings to run an organization when I chose my career. What are you keeping the industry secrets from us? Dude, I would have been awesome. I'd be awesome at this. I could easily be an NFL owner / GM. I know how to look at Madden ratings. It's super easy. Let's see. All right, last one. Does this defense kind of remind you of the 2006 Colts? Really good safety in the back end and talented pass rushers who struggled to get to the quarterback until the playoffs. Man, Richard, I don't know that I know you're talking Freeney, Mathis, Bob Sanders, right? Like, I'd have to go back and look a little bit more at the 2006 Colts defense to make a strong, educated take on that. But I don't really care as long as they're trending in the right direction come playoff time. And hopefully they can go out and have an unbelievable postseason, get healthy at the right time. And we see the best Packers defense that we've seen in a long time, maybe even capable of winning them some games. That's what I'm looking forward to from this defense come playoff time. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here, have a nice little family night, little dinner, little maybe movie watching, fire in the fireplace, snow falling outside. Should be a fun one. I hope you guys all enjoyed as well. Holidays coming up. Yeah, it's going to be a fun period of time. Packers Monday Night Football, happy hour tomorrow. Make sure to check that out, 3 p.m. Central Time. I'll do my best not to change that on you guys. That's going to do it for me for now. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.